Okay, we are live on Facebook on the Las Vegas Triathlon Club Facebook page, and we are recording. I'm John Mercer, president of Las Vegas Triathlon Club, and I've got Tedd Girouard here with me tonight for Tedd Talks Triathlon.
All
Hey,
right.
Tedd, how's it going?
It's going good. Yeah, it's going really good.
Awesome. Well,
Just
this is going to be a fun talk because you have a lot of knowledge about a lot of things triathlon, but I know you have a lot of knowledge about Training Peaks, and I'm interested in how to use it more. I have a Training Peaks account. I use it. I monitor some stuff, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about how to maximize the use of it. And this conversation is also part of our sports science series that we're doing, and this is fun to connect just with you and I on this topic. So let's talk about Training Peaks. Where do you want to start?
yeah. So I actually want to start with talking about there's so many different ways to use it, and I am going to talk about how I use it, not necessarily how probably the masses use it. The masses most likely use it with a coach. So I'm self-coached. I know, John, you're self-coached as well. But Training Peaks is often used as a conduit between a coach and an athlete. And oftentimes the athlete just follows exactly what their Training Peaks says. I do not use it that way. I use it more retrospectively and prospectively, but no one else other than me is putting data into my Training Peaks. Now, I've coached athletes with Training Peaks and built up their programs for them as well that way. But that's not how we're going to talk about it tonight. I'm going to, even if you're coached by somebody else, getting to understand what all the numbers mean, I think is really, really important. And, I guess some people don't want to know that. They just want to go and do what their coach tells them to do. But I think that the more an athlete knows about, the numbers behind what they're doing, the better off that they will be.
No, so, for sure. That you're spot on with that.
Yeah. So to start out, we need to talk about some verbiage. So the number one most important verbiage, I think, in Training Peaks is something called TSS, or training scoring stress. So this is an interesting thing, and it was, this was developed by Training Peaks, and in the early days, like this stuff goes back about 20 years into the development of the training scoring stress system. But basically, what it is it's a number that is assigned to every single session that an athlete would do. So the easiest way to think about it, a training scoring stress of 100 is 1 hour of all-out effort. So that could be 1 hour of biking at your absolute threshold, right? So you're going for 1 hour as hard as you could possibly go, and when that hour ends, you got nothing left. You get a TSS of 100. Same if you did an hour of swimming at your maximum pace, you would get a TSS of 100. Same with biking. The truth is, it's really hard to get a TSS of 100 in 1 hour. Okay. So for example, today I rode like 4 hours, and I think my TSS, we'll pull it up, was like 190 or something like that.
Okay.
So it's calculated based off of percentage of effort per amount of time. Okay. So when we build this, and actually I'm gonna pull up my screen here. So I'm gonna share.
All right. Now, as you do that, let me ask you, I know Garmin has TSS, Strava has TSS. Are they all using the same equation?
They are.
Yeah.
So they've actually all bought it or licensed it from Training Peaks.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, but the key behind TSS is actually in how you build it. And what I mean by that is it goes off of the zones that you set. So here we are in my profile. This is Count Chocula for anybody that from The Simpsons that cares. But over here when you see zones, and actually I'll make this a little bit bigger. This is probably the most important thing in all of Training Peaks, is to make sure your zones are set correctly, because your zones are going to help you calculate what your TSS is. So this happens basically automatically. Okay, so there is the default heart rate. So this is just kind of overall heart rate zones. And I've built this over time. I actually need to be updated. I did a Zwift race on Wednesday and I had a max heart rate of 180. So I got to actually change that. I actually thought my max heart rate was 177, but it's actually a little higher. But the default is, the default heart rate is utilized for creating TSS when you don't have power or speed. Okay. So I rarely ever use the default heart rate. I use power and speed. So we're going to slide down here and we're going to look at power. Okay. So my Training Peaks right now calculates my threshold power at 273 watts. And that's Training Peaks automatically builds this over time. And every time you get a new threshold, it automatically will update this if you select it to do that. So right now my threshold is 273. So it's basically guessing that I can do 273 watts for an hour. And then you can calculate your zones based off of that. But really the zones in this case don't really matter because my threshold here is what matters. So if I go out today, let's say I did an hour at 273 watts, I'd get 100 TSS score. But I went out today and I did 4 hours at 160 or 170 watts. So then it calculates it quite a bit lower for that amount of time. Like I said, if it was like 190 something was my TSS for the day. But if you don't have this number accurate with the power meter, if you want to use power, we'll show you how you can use speed as well. You're not going to get a good TSS score. And then, John, you were asking about the Garmin. Mm-hmm. So what I do, what you have to do is you have to make sure that this number stays the same in Garmin. Okay. They don't talk to each other. Mm-hmm. So every now and then I go into my Garmin Connect and I'll change the threshold to 273 or whatever. And same with Strava. They're not talking to each other. They're close. Like I think that my threshold here and my FTP in Garmin, my threshold in Strava, excuse me, is actually 271 or 272. If it's within 1 or 2, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you got to do this for swimming too?
Yeah, I'll show you how you do that for swimming.
Okay.
Okay. This is for running. So I use I calculate this off of my running pace. So my threshold for running is calculated at 626. And I just built that off of a 10K time. Okay. Because I know if for 10K, I could hold that for another, if I run a 40-minute 10K, I could run that for another 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty comfortable with that. So I built that threshold time there as well. Now, once again, these zones don't matter. It's all based off of this, right? So once again, if I go out and run an hour at 626 pace, I'll get 100 TSS points.
Okay.
If I do, longer or even shorter, it'll calculate that based off of that.
Okay, I'm looking at my setting right now.
Yeah. And
my threshold pace is higher than it says 10.
Yeah, there's no way that your threshold is 10. So when it's calculating your TSS, it's doing it wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a way to go back in, and I can actually show you how to retroactively push it back.
Okay, so you are using for running a threshold, a pace that you can do a 10K roughly, yeah. Or okay.
Yeah, that's how I do it. Really, it probably should be like a 15K.
Yeah.
Truly an hour. But I mean, I've done so many of those VR races with the 10Ks in. I'm just using those.
Okay.
There hasn't, I've even in the past used a half marathon and just used the first 15K of the half marathon. I mean, there's lots of formulas to figure it out. But if you're within 5%, it doesn't make much difference.
Okay.
Yeah. But 10 on that for you would be and really what's happening when you do that, John, is your TSS then it's actually saying you're working way harder than you're working.
Okay.
Right. So if you go out and run that 8-minute pace, let's say you do a pretty hard effort at 8-minute pace, it's going to think that you are like crushing it, like super threshold, and it's going to give you a really high TSS.
Okay. So I may have been overestimating. Interesting. Okay.
So now this is swimming. So this one actually is not very accurate for me right now. We just haven't been swimming enough. Like I honestly don't have a good metric right now. But when I was swimming more, this was for me, based off of the races in the fall where I was at, like 134 seconds per 100 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And all I did for that, because it's an hour, I mean, I wasn't really racing an hour, but I was going off my half Ironman, my last half Ironman swim pace. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now, if I was to do an Ironman, I'd use that pace, because once again, it's for the hour. Like, what do you think you could hold an hour at?
Mm-hmm.
And then in the fall, we were doing a lot of 30-minute swims for pace. And I was, in between races, that's what I was using for that number.
Okay.
Because I'm pretty sure, like, if I can hold something for 30 minutes, I pretty much can hold it for an hour. Like,
mm-hmm.
I'm pretty consistent with that. There is going to be some degradation, but once again, it's not that critical. And you don't build up a lot of TSS points swimming. And I'll show you some of that as we move along. But anyway, you need to build these things into Training Peaks to get accurate data. Okay. And I think this is a mistake a lot of people make, is they don't put in their zones and have these correct.
Guilty. All right. So I'm guilty of that. And I got a question already on Facebook from Christy. And I get this as well. Every now and then you get these messages, new threshold detected or achieved. Does Training Peaks automatically change these if you do a ride in Zwift or
yeah, if you have it in a setting, and I don't know where that setting is, but when it happens, I think it's actually under notifications.
Okay.
So you notify me if suggested threshold changes via email, and then automatically apply new threshold.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you'll get that email, and as long as you have it clicked here, it'll automatically apply it.
Okay, under notifications. Yeah, and I've unclicked mine because every now and then I use my wrist. It gets my wrist heart rate, and my wrist heart rate it just goes crazy during a run. So I don't use that. Okay, good. So I'll leave mine unchecked at this point.
Now, all of these other things in the settings. Once again, you can do like a speed and a pace, and you can actually set it up for. So mine is set for swimming. You could do, I have one for running, one for swimming. You could do speed and pace for biking as well if you don't have a power meter.
Okay.
I think that you might actually, instead of that, honestly, you'd probably want to go off of the heart rate, just the general heart rate.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, that default heart rate. If you don't have, if I didn't have my power meter for the day, let's say I rented a bike and didn't have a power meter, it'll go off of this instead. It'll go off of my heart rate.
Got it.
Okay, so we're good with that setting and understanding hopefully a little bit about what TSS is.
So TSS is the key to Training Peaks.
Yes.
And it's telling you how intense the exercise is, combining how hard it is as well as how long you go for.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, the next verbiage, we're going to talk about these three numbers here. Okay. So this is fitness, fatigue, and form. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click this little thing here, because this really does tell a lot about what it is. Okay. So fitness is also known as CTL. And what it is, it's a 42-day rolling average of your TSS. So what it's doing, it's actually, this is statistics and almost stock market stuff when you're talking about rolling averages. So it's a weighted rolling average, which means that the days closer to today, historically, the last 42 days are weighted more than the days further away. So what you've done in the last week is weighted higher than what you did 6 weeks ago. So 42 days, right? That's 6 weeks. But what they're saying here is this is your fitness, and your fitness is basically a picture of what you've done in the last 42 days. Right? And obviously, and like I said, and more about what you've done more recently, but we understand that the bases come from further away. So that's your fitness number. That's a number that a lot of coaches and athletes use to target for a race. So, I could look historically at my CTL or my fitness level. When I raced well, my CTL, I can't remember, it was like 130, right? And so I may look at, okay, I've got to race Unfortunately, I don't have any on the calendar. Well, Zwift races on the calendar, but something I was targeting. So let's say I was still targeting the race in Edmonton this summer. And I could say, I want to be 130 by that race. So then I can build my program to get my CTL to 130 and do it in a smart way. And I'll talk about how we do it in a smart way. But that's the number that is really how fit you are at any given point. Now, the next number, ATL, so your fatigue number, is basically how tired are you, right? And it's only off of your last 7 days, because fatigue doesn't hold in your system, right? You don't have fatigue from what happened 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. The theory is that you really only have fatigue that kind of is off of the last 7 days of what you do. So once again, it's just, now this one is just an average of your TSS from the last 7 days. Okay. And I'll show you this in a graph form, but really this is how tired you are. The last one is TSB, and what TSB is, it is yesterday's fatigue yesterday's fitness minus yesterday's fatigue. Okay, so it actually will look at the difference between the two, and we'll show you this in a graph. And when I show you it in a graph, it really kind of pops, but it basically lets you know how good you're going to be today. Right? You could have a really high CTL, so really high fitness. Let's say your fitness was 130, but you're fatigued, like you are just beat. You have been training to the bone. You could be super fit, but not perform well because you're fatigued. So the key here is on race day, you want to be as fit as you can with the least amount of fatigue that you can, and that will make your form good.
Okay. So if I do a big week, and that's the biggest week I've done over the last month and a half, then during that big week, my fatigue is going to be high. My fitness will be lower than that, so I'm going to have a negative form.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the last thing you'd want to do, let's say you did a big week, let's say you did the biggest week of the year, you're not going to race the next day.
That's right, because I'm pretty tapped out. And that's what that form is going to tell me. Yeah. Okay.
And the tricky thing is to find that balance, right? So what we'll do is I'm actually going to shift to a graph that shows this. So, dashboard.
Yeah, and Training Peaks has lots of graph options.
Exactly. And that's actually the thing that I wanted to also say is there's so many graphs you could build. There are some really, really important ones. And this graph here, for me, is the most important graph.
Okay.
So this is my form fitness TSS score for the last month. And this is something that when I'm monitoring it close, this is the most important thing for me. So when we're looking at this, I know there's a lot of information here. Let me actually make this graph as big as I can.
So just a step back, when you have set up your dashboard, you can pick different graphs to put in there.
Exactly.
So the one that you pick is the last 28 days is one of your key ones.
Yeah. And this is for all sports. Now I have this, I'll show you my whole dashboard, but I have it broken down by sport as well.
Okay.
But especially right now when I'm just trying to keep going with base fitness mostly, I'm not too concerned about how much bike versus run versus swim I have. So what I'm looking at here is when we look at the pink line, that's my fatigue level. So for the last month, I've been pretty fatigued. Okay. So I've been, because I've been actually trying to build fitness right now. Like I literally I'm looking at this time to be building and banking fitness. And if you look at my blue line, the blue line is my fitness line. Okay. So my fitness line is slowly creeping up because my fatigue is above the line the entire time. Now the trick is you don't want to have your pink line too far over your blue line. Right? You want to, if you're trying to build fitness, have it just slightly above Now I took a few days off here because knew I was getting ready for a bigger week. So I took a few days off here, and we'll actually see it drops underneath. And then when you look at the yellow line, that's my form. So I wasn't in really good shape for a long time in here, but I'm not like trying to peak for anything. I'm not, trying to set the world on fire.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, I knew that this week, which is where we're at right now, I'm doing a training camp this week. And so I wanted to come in rested. So I took a few days off, and all it takes is a few days and you bring your form up. So like on Tuesday, when I started my training camp, I was, actually you can look at the number there, I was at 8 on my form. So I was positive form. My fitness was above my fatigue. So it's basically a good day to start, building again, kind of refreshing myself. Now, if I look back into here, so 5:11, this was not a good day, right? I'm actually at minus 36 form. There's no way I should race that day or do anything. And you could look, my TSS that day was 0. So my TSS that day being 0 means I didn't do anything. So I recognized the day before, and you can actually see what's going to happen in the future. So I looked on the Sunday, which was the day before, and I had a big TSS day. I had 198. I had a really hard couple sessions that day. I think I biked and ran that day hard. It was my birthday, so I was like, I was going to kill it on my birthday. And
happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you. But then I recognized I was going to be in a hole here. And what I've learned from me is if I'm in a hole of minus 30 or longer in my form, for any significant time, that's when I get injured. So that's kind of like the bottom for me is like, if I start to see minus 30 for more than one day, I back off quick. And I've actually looked back at this data, and I can look back 4 or 5 years of data. And it's like every time I hold that too long, I get hurt.
All right. So I know you're going to probably get to this. Where do you keep notes in Training Peak like that? Like,
I actually don't. That's so funny because when I get hurt, it's so ingrained in my memory. And I'm going to show you, and I'll show you what ends up happening when you get hurt.
Okay.
And why this is such a valuable tool.
Okay.
Because now and it took trial and error for me to figure out like how long I could hold that. Because really during that time, if you look up at the blue, I'm gaining fitness quite quickly. Yeah. Right. But it's at a cost.
Right.
And that's the trick of this and that's the beauty of it. Now, if I go into the future here, so this is today. So I had a 182 TSS today. And today and this is the morning, I had a negative 16. Okay. So I'm still doing okay. I'm not killing myself, but now I look forward to tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm at a minus 23. Okay. So I'm still not in my super gray zone yet. Right? I know that my gray zone happens in the 30s. So as I plan for tomorrow, and actually these dots are already my planning for tomorrow. So as I plan for tomorrow, I'm planning a TSS of 126 tomorrow, which I know because my fitness is at 104, a 126 is not really overreaching for me too much. Yeah. It'll drop me down, and it'll keep me relatively the same. So I'll go from minus 23, and then Sunday I'll still be minus 23. I won't have changed.
All right, hold on a second. Yeah. On my dashboard, when I look at the future, it just degrades exponentially. Okay.
Have you built workouts in?
I have not.
Okay.
This is what you do. All right.
So I don't always do this. Okay. I did this actually more for this purpose.
Got it.
Because I kind of do this in my mind anyways, because I'm starting to look every day. But I wanted to show what happens when I build out another week.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Okay. And I didn't know that that's what it would do, but this makes perfect sense.
So now this is my next week, and I can look. So next Thursday, I'll be a minus 22. Next Friday, I'll be a minus 18. On Tuesday, because I'm going to take Monday off. On Tuesday, I'll be a minus 13. So trying to keep this in the negatives. So I'm building fitness, which we can see in the blue line. I'm building fitness over time. So by the end of my training camp next Friday, I'll have a fitness of 109.
Okay.
And
That's pretty sophisticated. Yeah.
And at the beginning of my training camp, my fitness was 98. So, and here's the other key, John. I think this is, and we'll get into that, is you cannot build fitness quickly. Fitness is built over time.
Yep.
And that's when you go too quickly, that's when the form drops. You get those negative 30s. That's when you get injured. That's when bad stuff happens. And you know, it's the greedy athlete that happens to.
Yeah. And I think
you can do it and get lucky.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other catchphrase that we had talked with another group about was you got to only push fitness up.
Yep, exactly.
And you don't want to get too high and then try to pull it up, but you're trying to build that base and just keep lifting your fitness upwards.
Okay, so then before we go into the rest of my dashboard, I want to go back to this screen.
Okay.
This is the home screen, because these numbers, the fitness ramp rates, are so important.
Yeah, I've been looking at mine. Those are interesting.
Okay, so what a ramp rate is basically the amount of CTL or fitness you gained per week. Okay, in any given interval. So in the last 7 days, I've only gained 2 points of fitness, which is fine. Like, it doesn't bother me, right?
Say that again.
So in the last 7 days, my CTL or my fitness is gained 2 points. And if you look at the research on this, anything over 4 points per week is probably putting you in the danger zone.
Okay.
Right? Because we're talking about, like, I'm going from, in 2 weeks, I was going to go from 98 to 108. That's getting up there. Like, that's actually 5 per week. That's right at the limit of where I want to be. And then if I look at my last 7 weeks, last 4 weeks, I've been doing basically five points per week.
Okay, mine is still dropping. Mine's -6 in the last 7 days, but I did take 2 days off this week. So
4 to 5 points per week is building, and it's building well, and it's building, like, once again, to be sustainable over time. And then if you look at my last 90 days, I've had this really steady rise.
That's nice.
And that's what you want to do. Now, you know, obviously I was injured in the winter, and not because of chronic training, but because of a crash. And you know, when you start looking at those things and look at this data, it really does show, like, when we have nice, good climbs like this that are consistent, that's how you build fitness. Here's my last year. So this is literally a year ago in May, and I wasn't very fit because I actually overtrained, got injured, and then I had to do this big build through the summer and into the fall, and then I crashed my bike here. But I was, you know, this is when I was racing really, really well, and then I got injured, and this was me kind of trying to come back from being injured, and then actually I got sick as well. Actually, I got sick right there. And so you can actually see what ends up happening when we don't train consistently.
Yeah.
Right. So my goal, like, honestly, when I was in here on this ramp, was like, okay, after the season, let's just keep this level. But getting injured causes the leveling to not occur. Right. So let's go back to my dashboard, and I'm going to show you some of the other graphs I use that actually show, they show this as well. So this is for me, and like I said, everyone has a little bit different dashboard. I like to keep the duration. I can make this a little bigger. Hang on a second. There we go. Okay, so this is just duration of time per week. So this is over, I think these are all last 90 days. So my average per week is like 9 hours per week. But then I can go and I can look at each individual week and see my basically how much duration I've had. So this week has been, sorry, this would be last week because this is right now. This is this week. So 13 hours for this week, 10 hours that week. You can just, I like to use that kind of, it's more of a motivator for me. That's one of the first things I like to look at.
Yeah, I could add that graph on my dashboard. I don't have that one.
It's a nice one. And then I do per sport. So distance run per week, distance bike per week, and unfortunately, distance swam per week. Starting to get back at swimming though. So that's good.
That's right.
But same thing with this. Like I like to look at my average over, for example, 90 days and where I'm at. And there'll be weeks I'm below and there'll be weeks I'm above, but you don't want to ever be too far above or too far below. And for me, I like to use 90 days just to kind of see where I'm at. Right. Yeah. I know that if every week I'm kind of right around, I'm only 17 miles a week running.
Uh-huh.
If I'm right around that, and if I'm just a little bit above that, I'm probably gaining fitness.
Yeah.
Right. Same with my bike. So I've been the last 9 weeks, 90 days, I'm only averaging 152. But if I looked at my last it's in the last 6 weeks, it's quite a bit more because I was once again sick and injured. Okay. The next one I like to use is a running and biking performance manager. This is called the performance manager chart. So it's the same chart as this, except for it's just swimming it's just running and biking.
Okay.
And then the other thing that we didn't talk about is, and I don't actually have this going into the future, would you can set it up to the future if you want, but is the blue dots and the red dots. So every day you have a blue dot. So on the red dots, those are days, if they're on the bottom, I didn't train because the red is the TSS. So those are TSSs of 0. And if I look at any individual day, so let's look at this big day here. So so May 2nd, I had a TSS of 235. That was a pretty massive day for me at that time. Which is something called intensity factor, which we have not talked about yet.
Mm-hmm.
But intensity factor is the percentage of your threshold.
Okay.
So basically, intensity factor of 1.0 is 100% of your threshold. Now you can go higher than 1% of your or than that. So for example, let's say you did a 30-minute race, you could have like a 1.1 intensity factor.
Okay.
Right. But normally they're below, it's like 1.0 and below.
Good. Okay. Now I got a question on Facebook related to the fitness level.
Yeah.
So is the fitness level number that you're seeing there, let's say yours right there is 130. Is that because you're a high level athlete, or can anyone achieve 130?
Okay. This is tricky stuff. Not everyone can achieve 130 unless they're doing multiple sports.
Okay. So
I have a friend who's a high level cyclist, and when he's at 100, he is crushing it.
Okay, because it's all biking.
Right. Right. But for me, like when I'm biking, swimming, and running, I can be at a 130. Right now, just biking and running, I don't think I could get to 130.
Okay.
Because I'm just not adding that extra stress. Does that make sense?
Yep. No, that does. Okay. So if I'm just using this to run and maybe plan for a marathon, Boston or something,
yeah,
then I need to adjust my mind in terms of what is a reasonable fitness level for running only.
So here's my running only.
Okay. Training does that.
So my run fitness today is a 28.
Got it. Okay.
All right. But then I'm going to add it to, here's my bike. My bike fitness is a 70.
Got it.
And once again, if I was a biker, they're like, oh yeah, you're okay.
Yep.
Right. Like I would be like a good cat 3 out of 70 maybe, right? But like a legit cyclist, they'd look at 70 and be like, oh, you're horrible, right?
Right.
Same with a legit runner, because like a really legit runner is running more than 20 miles a week.
Sure.
But I'm building my fitness from multiple points.
Okay.
Right. So that's a nice thing about Training Peaks is you can actually pull out each individual one. And if I look back a few years ago when I was running a lot, I would think I was doing 40, 50 miles a week for a while. Then, my run fitness got a lot higher.
Wow.
And when I did that, I did a big run focus for like 100. I did that 100 runs, 100 days from Slow Twitch.
Right.
But then I wasn't biking that much.
Okay.
Right. Because that's the thing is we can only do so much.
Mm-hmm.
I think the highest my fitness ever got was like 142, 143, and I was wrecked.
Yeah.
But it was, and I only did it for a couple of events, and honestly, like it was I was overtraining. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It was quite simple. Okay, so let's.
Good. Thanks, Mac, for that question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So now this one I love because this is now looking at my last 2 years, and I can pick out when I got injured quite easily. There was an injury here. Actually, yeah, there was an injury here, and there was an injury here.
Are those both after?
And actually. Sorry. This one was not an injury. This was end of season. This was season ended, rested.
Got it.
Built too fast, got injured, and my fitness went way down.
Yeah.
Right. And actually here, if this went a little bit further, this was an injury here as well.
Okay.
So I got injured like probably just a few days before this, and then my fitness went way down. And it was my IT band at that point. And so I could still bike and swim. So I was actually able to maintain some level of fitness, but I basically didn't run from like there. And I built up to basically the end of the season with basically no running. But then, then took some time off, tried to get things to heal. And then honestly, like this was a big mistake. This ramp rate was too high. And you can actually see like my form right before I get injured is like -33, -52. Right? Because I was like just desperate. I'm like, I'm finally feeling good. The season's about to start. This is March.
Yeah.
And then, I end up injuring my knee. And this is what happens when you get injured. And then you have to build again. And you can actually see this. I get smarter, built slow.
Yep.
And use the metrics properly, and then got injured again here. But this was a bike crash, and so it wasn't an overtraining thing. I was actually starting to come into some decent form right around here, and but anyways, I think like that's a good thing to kind of look back retrospectively. And there is a way, John. I just don't know off the top of my head how to like plot like an injury like with a line, but I can just see it, and I can like you remember those bigger injuries.
Yep.
Quite easily.
Yep.
Okay. So some of the other things I use in the dashboard, time and power zones on the bike. So this is just a kind of a check for me to make sure that I'm not overtraining, not training too much in the wrong zones. Obviously I don't spend a lot of time in like zone 6 and zone 5, but I do spend some time in them, mostly because I've been doing Zwift racing, and that pushes me into those uncomfortable zones. I'm actually probably like most people not training for anything in particular right now. And I'm just trying to have fun. And right now, Zwift racing is where I'm getting my most of my fun.
That's great.
And then these 3 charts, this is TSS per week. So now this is TSS per week for all workout types, last 90 days. And this is actually more important than the duration and time. This is literally like how much score you're getting on a weekly basis, and then how intense it has been. So red is TSS, blue is the intensity factor. right? So when I'm here, for example, my intensity factor this week was 0.84. There was a couple Zwift races in there, and I think we maybe had a tri-club duathlon, I think was that week or something like that. So I was pushing pretty hard, but I was trying to be smart. So at that time, my TSS was low. So I was working hard, but not as much, not building as much volume. So you can kind of play around with those things a little bit. This week we're in right now, I'm mostly doing base work. And so I'm 0.72 intensity factor. And right now I'm building a pretty good TSS for the week. And once again, this is not complete for this week yet. Then I break these down by bike and by run as well. And so, like, for example, for me, as I'm building the next few days, like I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, well, what am I doing this week?
Yeah.
Well, my bike is above average already for the week, right? For my last 90 days. But my run, I haven't ran much this week, but I'm going to do a 15K run tomorrow. I'm going to do that Ironman VR, and I'm going to do back-to-back, the 210, the 10 and the 5 back-to-back. So I know that I'm going to, by the end of tomorrow, my TSS for running will be above my average for the week, for that week. But it's nice for me to see as I come in, especially coming into a weekend where I have more time, most of us have more time, where you're at. And it's like, okay, I don't necessarily need a huge long bike ride, but I do need a long run, or maybe multiple runs.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have one of those for swimming, but once again, it's not so good right now.
Okay, I have not used that graph, but now I'm putting it on my dashboard.
It's a nice graph. It's, like I said, especially going into a weekend, to kind of see, like, what do I need to kind of fill the bucket?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I always look at the weekend as a chance to kind of fill the bucket for the week.
And you do 7 days is what you do?
Well, it's per week.
Yep.
And so it's last 90 days. Actually, I'll show you when when you build it, it looks like this, right?
Yep.
So it's bike, last 90 days by week, and then I show average.
Got it.
And actually, I guess that's good to show everybody. Like, you can build these for anything.
Yeah. So what you do is you would add it again, and change the sport to run.
Exactly.
Okay.
And to swim. And then for my all workout types, I have all workout types, because every now and then I do something, different, but very rarely.
All right. So I'm looking at mine. Mine is degrading, and my percent body fat is going up. So I probably need to do something about that. All right. Good.
Okay.
These are great. Yeah.
So the next one, this is just for fun, like kind of completed duration. I kind of keep a little bit of an eye on this. Obviously, I'm not happy. We've talked about already with the swimming being so little. But this is just kind of something to keep in the back of my mind, to have balance. Like, I like to have about a 50% bike, 25% run, 25% swim. That's for me personally when I feel like I'm doing well. But that's an individual thing. The next one I look at, though, I really like this one, and that's the time and heart rate zones for biking and running. I don't pay attention to heart rate swimming. I just can't seem to ever get good metrics. I got to get that thing that goes on your head.
Yeah, the form goggles. Yeah, the polar heart rate. It actually works pretty good.
Yeah, I'm going to invest in that. But for me, because I do more of a polarized model, you can see so much of my time is in zone 1.
Mm-hmm.
Like 75% of my time is in zone 1. And for me, it's really hard for me to get into zone 5 and 6 and 7. But I'm not really concerned about those zones, to be honest with you, because I'm trying to do long distance triathlon.
Yeah.
And long distance triathlon is about aerobic base.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a graph that I kind of like to see. I would honestly like to see, for me, 4 and 5 a little higher, 2 and 3 maybe 3 a little less. But once again, the Zwift racing, a lot of it is actually at zone 3.
Yeah.
I know that's where it's coming from.
Well, and my problem is I don't always put my heart rate monitor on, and then my wrist heart rate monitor just goes crazy. And with that, there are ways you can actually
override it.
Okay.
Not in Training Peaks, but there's some other things that you can actually, there's tools where you can actually basically override it and build in your heart rate. So if you know, for example, John, that you went running for, let's say you did 10K at like a 9-minute pace, and you know your heart rate was around 135, 140, let's say, hypothetically, you could actually augment it.
Okay.
It takes a little work to do, and obviously, like the best part about all this stuff is it happens automatically, right? Like you plug your watch in, or you upload the data, and it automatically happens.
Yeah, I'm looking at mine, and I'm seeing about 7% of my time in zone 7.
Yeah, and that's not possible.
Yeah.
Because that's like supra threshold. Yeah, like hold for 30 seconds. And your 7 is never going to be high, right? Your 6 and 7 are never going to be high. No. You know, for me, is it 27 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember what this is off. I would just look at kind of like percentage wise.
Yep.
And then once again, these are my performance manager charts for bike, run, and swim. Mm-hmm. And then there's a few others that I don't really pay attention too much to calories anymore. I used to. And then I'm monitoring now my HRV and my pulse every day. And I've just started doing that in the last month. And
which tool are you using to do?
I'm using Whoop.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've used Whoop for 3 or 4 years, but I've never integrated it. I didn't realize you could integrate it into Training Peaks, but now I know you can integrate it. I'm starting to.
It's nice when everything happens automatically.
Exactly. You used to be able to just put it in like manually. And I used to do like the body fat every week or every day or every week, sorry, and then weight but I don't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing this is a nice one. It's fitness history, peak pace by distance for running. Okay. So basically you can kind of look at your peak pace, and once again, it happens automatically. So this is just by month or by week. Unless you're doing racing a lot, it doesn't really mean a whole lot, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Right.
So, because otherwise it's just your training pace. So you really want to know your peak pace during a race, and it will automatically pick that up.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So if you're racing a lot, it's a decent thing. And then you can put in race reports. I've got old race reports in here, but anyways, you can actually build your own race reports like after the race.
Okay.
So let's go into the calendar. So this is what a lot of people see because their coach uploads things into their calendar, and we can go back. So let's go back just 1 week and look at last week and this week. So this is last week, and this is last week for me. So you can see where I ran, cycled, ran, swam, cycled, ran, cycled. The problem is like, for example, like when you do, like for me, when I Zwift, the warm up, different files, and it just overpopulates things, but you can see that the TSS scores get built. So let's actually look at, we'll pick out one. Actually, I'll pick out my fun race I did on Wednesday night. So when you click on each individual one of these things, then these are populated automatically. So if I click on, just click on it. This is the data in behind the file. So, and then John, I think we started out this whole thing saying there's so much information here, right? So now this gets down into like micro information. Actually, so this is more medium size. It gets even more micro than this. So this was a race I did on Wednesday night. And I like to use the race data because I think I'm trying hard.
Yep.
Right. So in this,
And while you bring that back up, I mean, it's important to give a context here. You're 4th in the world in your age group?
3rd now.
Third
in USA cycling. Sorry.
USA, that is awesome.
But for the B group, there's an A group, which are like the pro guys.
Okay, so, that's fantastic.
So Yeah, there's the cycling league that the USA Cycling started for USA Cycling members, and it's a 10-week race series, and we just finished week 5.
Okay.
So you can once again look at this stuff and look at where these things get built, right? So this was the amount of time, distance, miles per hour, calories, elevation gain. But here's the thing, here's the TSS, and this gets built automatically, right? So this was 48 minutes at an intensity factor of 0.99.
Pretty high.
So and here's the thing is, there was a lot of time in the race where I was well above my threshold.
Mm-hmm.
So there was on this, you can actually see my maximum power was 564 watts.
Yep.
And there was 4 climbs where I was over 400 watts for 2 minutes.
Wow.
And then the finish, I tried to get to 600 watts. I didn't. I'm not quite strong enough. There's guys in the race, honestly, that are getting 1,000 watts at the finish.
Oh, wow.
I'm not that guy.
That's a Wingate test. That's 30 seconds. That's crazy. That's really high.
So that's why the intensity factor is pretty high.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, like I did just over 3/4 of an hour and I built a TSS of 78. I can go up for a 2-hour easy bike ride and get a 78 as well. Mm-hmm. And that's important to understand, is that if you don't put it, I'll have a little bit of context to understand the intensity factor and how that factors in. It is somewhat important, but in other ways it's not as important as you think, because like the next day I felt fine.
Mm-hmm.
I only built up 78. I probably felt very similar to if I would have ridden 2 hours, at a decent training pace.
All right.
And that's the beauty of the TSS system.
Okay, so there's a question on Facebook from Laura related to TSS then. Are there specific ranges of TSS based on age, sex, and sport that one should work towards? So what
No.
Okay.
No.
Or should you just try to slowly improve TSS?
Well, not necessarily. Yeah, yes, you should slowly try and improve TSS. Yes, mm-hmm. Because you can. It literally is how much stress your body can take, mm-hmm. Right? So if we were just to take somebody off of the street that is, in decent shape, but not a cyclist, runner, or whatever, and we start them out, if we gave them a TSS of, if they went a TSS of 78, let's say let's make it even easy. Let's say they jogged nice and easy could they jog nice and easy for an hour? Mm-hmm. Most people can't.
Yeah.
Right. So a nice easy jog for an hour for them actually could be, let's say they could just barely finish that. That would be a TSS of 100 for that athlete.
Because their threshold would be low in that case. Or
yeah, exactly. So that's the tricky thing with TSS to understand is it's individual for every single person.
But then as you get fitter, your threshold goes up. So Eliud Kipchoge running his sub 2, he's running near threshold.
Who is that? Sorry, I got cut out for a second.
Kipchoge. Yeah. He's running at threshold for 2 hours, just under 2, or probably just a little bit over.
So he actually has to be under threshold.
Yeah, right.
Because it's 2 hours.
Right. Yes. Okay, good.
So he's probably 0.95 intensity factor.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So for 2 hours, his TSS for that effort was still under 200.
Okay.
It has to be.
Yep. Right?
Whereas if, let's say, we were to take somebody out on let's go with their bike now, and they're not a good biker, right? They haven't really biking much. And we bike them for 2 hours, let's say on their beach cruiser for 2 hours. And by the end, they got nothing. Like they were all in. Mm-hmm. Their TSS would have been 200.
Yeah. So it's really individualized in moments in time. So as you're getting fitter, you should not be necessarily targeting new TSS.
No, it's the CTS.
Yeah.
It's the fitness you're trying to build.
Right. And that's building over time. That's accumulating TSS over 7 days, 14, 42 days. Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
And that's the hard thing for people. I'm glad Laura asked that, because it's a hard thing for people to wrap their mind around,
Oh,
right? Because once again, like a TSS of 78, I could go for a 2-hour walk or 3-hour walk with some, and get a TSS of 78.
right.
Right. So it's very much contextual to me.
Yeah.
And that's important. That is really important to understand. So the one last thing I'm going to show you before we go is now I talked about this kind of medium, and here's the micro. Is when you press analyze, this is the nuts and bolts behind all of the data. And once again, you can get so much out of this if you know what you're looking for. So, and once again, you can add more and more charts to this as well. Actually, it's up here. How many charts you can, like, there's so many charts you can.
Okay, wait, you're in the Analyze tab?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't use this a lot because I can get caught up in this. Like if I just click on this charts table, like look at all these charts you can choose from.
I don't have.
This is for one day, like one workout.
Okay, I don't have my map in there. I need the map.
Yeah, I like to have the map in there.
Yeah.
Because then I like to use this one. So now I can actually see where on the map I am and what is happening. There's other things that I don't necessarily use very often. So like, for example, RPM. This was a race. I don't care about my RPM, so I can delete. Actually, I don't want to delete it. Sorry. I can hide it. So hide the RPM. For this, you can actually see this. This was that race I talked about. We had 4 climbs. So you can actually see the climbs, and I can see I honestly don't care about how fast I was going either, so I can hide that one. So now we can start to see power and heart rate and how it was related to where the climbs were. So like this was the last climb of the race. So let's say it really started here. So now you can actually zoom in on the last climb, which is, this is super cool.
I like that.
So now we zoom on that. So now we can actually look at the climb, watch my power, 230, 495, 500. And now we're starting to see, this is the cool thing, because this is the fatiguing that happens, right? So the climb is still going, but I can't hold the wattage anymore. My heart rate is going higher, but my wattage is going down. Like, and I can gain information from that, right? If I truly know what I'm looking for. And this is where obviously having a coach or a physiologist work with you, you can help develop that. Now, for me personally, right now all I have is Zwift racing, so maybe I should try and increase my power. But I also have a long game. I'm playing the long game to have a good half Ironman in the fall.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter to me like that I'm fatiguing from 560 watts to 500 watts. Doesn't really matter. But this is the level you can get into if you really do get into to looking at this. The other thing I like is when, especially on races, is looking at like heart rate by zone. Yeah. So this is obviously an individual file. So I'm at VO2 max in this race for 11% of the time. Wow. Or actually, yeah. So 169 to 177, and my max now, I just found out, is 180. But you can also see, like, I'm threshold for 40 and still temp at 46%. I'm working hard the entire time. Yeah. And then the same thing we can bust out with power. There's a lot of high work being done for me in a race. Right. Now, if I was to look at it, and we'll look at one more file, and then I'm going to be done. Sorry, there's so many buttons here. Yeah. I do. I've done the selection, and then I'll look at I've got the stats on the right-hand side of my graph. Yeah. It gives me normalized power for that section and so forth. So that is really useful, but I haven't actually zoomed in like you did. So that's neat. So now this is my ride for today. Okay. So this is outdoors. It's a 4-hour ride outdoors. Yeah. Now this gets pretty messy. right? And there's some drop offs here when I stopped and took a drink, stopped and had a little bite to eat. But once again, you can do something similar to that. I mean, there's too much data here to really pay attention to.
Yeah.
But for me, like today, I was trying to maintain a relatively low heart rate. So now I can just go into here and hide everything else, hide others. So there's my heart rate for the day.
Okay.
Right. And I can see actually, you know, it was actually relatively stable almost the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, within there's a way to see the range. Oh, here's the range over here. So like my max heart rate was 144. I was getting near home, dehydrated, and I had a big climb that I did not plan on. But other than that, I'm like right in the 130. And then I can look at the zones, and I want it to be a zone 1-2 ride.
Yeah.
And, you know, 21% zone 1, 67% zone 2, and like 12% zone 3. And it wasn't very much over like the 134, 135 range. And then the same with my power. I wanted it 1 and 2 mostly. Obviously, there's some time where you get a little bit higher, but my heart rate was still relatively low. Mm-hmm. And so for me, there's way more you could look at, but those are the main things that I look at after a ride.
I like looking at these too, especially when I wear my heart rate monitor. Then I can go back and make sure I'm in the zone that I was targeting.
Yep. So that's basically in a nutshell, like how I use it. I'm sure that there's there's lots of different ways to use it, and there's lots of different metrics that you can look at. There's even more depth. There's another software that Training Peaks owns called WKO, and it can get even deeper and deeper and deeper. But I think that's oftentimes we can get bogged down by too much information. So kind of the takeaways for people is the number one thing is understanding what fitness is, the CTL, the ATL, and the form, and the ramp rates, and making sure you're not ramping too fast. You know, the theory is that you should be able to keep getting your fitness stronger or higher and higher and higher forever. You can't.
No.
But ramping appropriately, and you know, we didn't even get into like planning for a race. Well, maybe when racing starts, we'll do another talk about like how you use the ramp rates to plan in for a race, and then how you can use them even to help your taper. So you actually are fresh for race day. When racing starts, hopefully we can do that.
I think the taper that would be great. I think we could do that, both the workout and then or the planning for a race, and then including the taper. Or go back to your home screen, because I think you're right. This is really, you know, minimally, this is how I use Training Peaks. It's really to monitor how I'm building over time. And these 3 numbers are really telling the snapshot. So even if I'm just on my phone, I'll just pick up my phone, I did a workout, and I'll check and see where I'm at. And in just my mind, I'm saying, am I building or am I just trying to maintain? Obviously at this time, you know, we're just trying to maintain or, you know, slightly build, because maybe we'll have some races coming up. But my next race, if St. George happens, that's still 18 weeks away. So I'm not looking to build strong at this point. I'm trying to have just a really good base. And so I'm just making sure that those 3 numbers are following what I'm hoping to do. If I see one going in the wrong direction, I'm going to stop and say, okay, what am I doing wrong?
Exactly. And I think like this, not like to me, like now, like this is the most important number. In the morning, because once again, this is from this morning. This doesn't count what I did today. These count what I did today. In the morning, I was a -16, which is perfectly fine for me to go out and go hard. But if I wake up, let's say I'm not paying attention, and this is a -36, I got to be like, whoa, I really need to think about, because I'm more guilty of overtraining than anything. Right. And, or let's say, you know, I'm unmotivated for a long period of time.
Something's wrong.
And I'm seeing this, and it's like 20. I'm losing fitness. Right. And then I'm seeing this precipitous drop in my fitness level. And it's actually one of the things that's really interesting that I do when I unfortunately do get injured is I don't look at Training Peaks.
Yeah, right.
It gets depressing when you start to see
That's
this
right.
number drop every day. I try and use it only when I'm healthy and when I'm building. So I don't build too fast.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good message. And I tried to avoid getting wrapped into the number specifically, but I try to use it as a gauge of how I'm feeling.
Exactly.
And trying to avoid the pressure. But I think for me, the way to avoid the pressure is to look at it frequently and to build that historical record of what those numbers are. But I agree with you, when you're just, there's times where you don't need to look at it off season, when you're trying to take a break.
Yeah.
When you are injured, there's no sense in watching it degrade, because
exactly
what it's going to do. We go on vacation. Well, it's going to go down. All right. Well, that's okay. You got to lose a little bit of fitness to gain some fitness. So.
And like for me right now, like I've kind of in my mind, and I've even talked, I always like to tell my wife what I'm doing, but I've told her, like, for now, until I have a half Ironman or an actual triathlon I'm trying to go for, I want to try to keep my fitness between 100 and 110. Just keep it. Just keep it there. There'll be weeks that I'm going to take it easy and it'll drop down to 100. And then I'm going to build, and I'm just going to try and keep that base. And then once I actually have something, let's say I know is like imminent, like 10 weeks away, then it says, okay, like I know I'm going to race well at 125 to 135. Let's build to that number over that period of time where there's a ramp rate and it's built in. And I know I can do it safely. That's the beauty of these numbers. Is you can actually hold yourself to it. Like we said, right now is maybe like a building time for people, or a holding time. Like, how do you hold if you don't know where you are?
That's right. Well, let's see. I don't know if I'm on. Why don't you go ahead and stop sharing your screen, because I'll show you my other training log. I still do the analog version.
Oh yeah.
And so I still keep all my notes from years past. Unfortunately, I lost one of these books on a flight.
No.
So I lost like 7 years worth of data, but I have my analog books from all the way back. They're nothing as what Training Peaks has. And I am enjoying the electronic version of keeping track of things. So this is great to go through this with you.
The other thing I will tell you and tell everybody is you can collect Training Peaks data for free. There's a free version. You just can't get all the graphs. So for example, like my Training Peaks ran out sometime when I was injured. I didn't re-up it. Like, well, I don't care right now. So I waited, and then I just re-upped it. I think it's with the USAT, they have a discount code for 20% off if you're a member. And there's lots of there's 20% off codes everywhere. I think it was like $80 for the year. I think. But obviously, like, we're getting milked to death on all these little subscriptions to everything. But for me, it's valuable.
Sure. It is, and
if you use it. If you use it properly.
Definitely. If you're trying to build a plan and then maybe replicate it the next time, or to tweak it, because maybe, without that, and without even writing something down, I think the risk that people run is that they're going to make big changes in their program and they're going to have big problems. It really is a matter of tweaking things as you go along, build that base over a long period of time.
Exactly.
Ted, this is great.
Perfect.
So now we'll have to do it again, but we'll have to dive into some of the details of the workouts. And doing some plans. And I know Training Peaks even has different training programs to get into. And
you could buy a pre-made Training Peaks plans there's thousands of them out there.
And we have nothing to do with Training Peaks, so this is just an interest of ours. So hey, this is great. I'm going to thank everyone who is on the live stream, and we've also got this recorded, so I'm going to post this on YouTube, and I'll be able to watch it later as well. So thanks, Ted.
You're welcome. Thank you.